players in the team. Keep a great company in the stream.
It's a Murali End. Welcome to the show. We're here when you're high. We're here when you're low. Some days you're happy, some days you wanna when happy. It's we when man, it's them. It's the same place, Murali End. Sri Lanka cricket we gon' represent. So tell a friend.
That song is mighty infectious, especially when we win. This is the Murali End. My name is Mark Machado. I'm joined by Kavinka, who's also in London, and Anton, Roux, joins us from South Africa. Sri Lanka have just beaten Oman. They scored 225 for 5. Oman scored 129 for 9 in reply. Pavan Ratnayaka with a sensational knock of 60 of 28 balls. There's a lot to talk about in what kind of feels like a kind of old-fashioned routine Sri Lankan win. Anton, you've been up. I feel you've been up earlier than me. I don't know why I feel that, but we'll come to you first, just to get your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, I mean, we just quietly discussed it just before we went live. I think today was a classical case of, which is a good. I'm being positive here. Obviously, is learnings from the previous game around being, seeing a little bit more intent, especially after the first 6 overs. But I think the big game changer today is that you're playing on a stroke conducive wicket that gives our players, gives the Sri Lankan players value for their shots. And obviously the outfield at Pallekele is lightning. So, learnings from the last game, better wicket. Guys were a little bit more inventive and definitely showed a little bit more intent with the bat. And Dasun is the king of Pallekele. There's his knock that I've been calling for. And when you package all those things together, you post 220 or 220. I think it was 225 or whatever it was on the board. So a very good performance from the bat. And of course, with the world-class bowlers that they have, it was just an all-round performance. And people are going to say, yes, it is Oman. But that's what we expected to happen today. And I'm glad to have seen it.
Kavi, I'll come to you in a minute, but we'll go to Estelle first because she's joining us live from the ground. Estelle, what was the atmosphere like at the ground today, and I don't know if you've had a chance to speak to anyone post-match.
No, I mean, not had a chance to speak to anybody because I'm into the studio right after the game. But the atmosphere, to be honest, not that great. I mean, it is a Thursday morning, right? Morning start 11 a.m. So not much of a crowd to speak of, but I think those who came were treated to a good show. I think something that we haven't seen much of in the recent past. Dasun Shanaka, obviously, with that fastest T20 50 by Sri Lankan, and Pavan Ratnayaka. I mean, to come back after that kind of performance in the first game was pretty special. So those who came were treated to a really good performance by Sri Lanka.
Kavi, is this just another routine win, or like what do we as Sri Lanka fans take from this?
I mean, with all due respect to Oman, I think it is just another routine win, isn't it? Because coming into the game, obviously, we played an Irish side who did put up a fight. They did give us a run for our money, but we overcame that. But then knowing that Oman is a side that we could, 99% of the time, we could just win a game against them. Pretty routine win. Nice to see confidence boosters. I think it was, it was Sandra who said there was a nice confidence booster for Dasun and Pavan. I'm pretty sure Dasun just wants to play Pallekele all the time, and he's probably hoping for a Pakistan-Sri Lanka final, and then suddenly they just choose Pallekele as the final venue.
Anton, coming into the tournament, we were slightly worried. We just lost a T20 and an ODI series to England. 2 wins in 2 games sets us up nicely now for the final run-in of the group. The coaches will be feeling a lot of relief today, right?
Absolutely. I think you could have, there were a few snippets from the cameramen during the game. You saw the coaches smiling a little bit more. The change room was a little bit more relaxed. And absolutely, I mean, The worst thing I think that could have happened today was if we had scraped over the line, right? So it was a dominant performance from us. There's not much more that you can ask from the team. Like I said, I think there was a lot of learnings taken from the first game into the second game, which is all good signs. Now, the crunch time of the group phase starts, but it's a great feeling to have because you've got 2 wins under the belt. You're sitting nicely on 4 points. Bring on Australia. I think that's the next game. So let's. I've got good feelings about that game.
Yeah, we'll come on to the next game. I think there's still a few bits to talk about. Anton, you talked about this pitch being just a better track. Surely, though, and I think we've seen some of this in some of the other games, not just in Colombo, but in other parts of it, where other games have been held in the tournament. The pitch, both sides have to play on it, right? Today, Sri Lanka scored quite quickly, and the kind of worry might be is maybe the Omanis might be able to do that as well. But we were able to score quick and then take wickets quickly as well, right? Why is the pitch so important in terms of how we were able to play?
Well, I think if you ask any batter what sort of pitch they want to play on, it doesn't really matter if the pitch is slow or fast. What they want is it to be stroke conducive. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't score quickly on slow turning tracks. It means you have to adapt and figure out accordingly what type of shots and which bowlers you can attack on those certain wickets. But just coming back to the stroke conducive stuff, like what we mean by that is if a guy decides to hit over the top, that the ball's not necessarily sitting in the wicket, he can trust the pace of the wicket, he can trust the bounce of the wicket, and then he can adapt accordingly from that. And I think that's what Pallekele gives you. And that's what we've been asking, especially in my time with Sri Lanka over there, is we want something similar at Premadasa, where we know that Premadasa is not going to have the same pace and bounce as Pallekele, absolutely not. But we just want it to be consistent and give you value for your strokes. And we've seen that they can produce that type of wicket at Premadasa, absolutely. But when the wicket is not conducive to stroke playing, I think that is where Sri Lanka finds it a little bit difficult to showcase their talents with the bat. Because the bowling is the bowling. It's world-class guys. I think we've got 4 guys. Okay, Wani's now injured, but I think we had like four guys that play in the IPL. So it's not like the experience and the talent is there. I just like seeing cricket being played on pitches like this because it allows for good stroke play, which gives you higher scores, and then it rewards the bowlers that are accurate. It rewards the bowlers that can get something out of the wicket when there's not necessarily a lot of assistance there. So it just gives you value, a much higher value product as a fan and as a coaching staff to actually watch what's going on there.
Yeah, and one of the other things we've talked about is that obviously, we don't take I don't take the Harry Brook line that Premadasa is one of the worst wickets you'll ever play on. But it's just not typical to the way wickets are across the rest of the world, right? So I kind of think, long term or medium term even, it kind of sets our teams up to fail in other parts of the world because they have to go and play cricket on better pitches, right?
Yeah, so I think using the England example, they're a one sort of dimensional team that really put their foot on the throttle and want to score as quick as they can and get all these high scores. So for them, the learning is actually how do they adapt when they get put on a track that's not conducive to their type of stroke play, right? So that's probably the learning that they've got to get into, and I'm sure their coaching staff have highlighted that. For the Sri Lankan method, I think for us it's different. Like when we go to a very good stroke playing ground is actually the way that we build our innings to get to 180 or 1. That's not enough. Now all of a sudden 200 is par, or maybe even 220 is par. So how are the Sri Lankan batters equipped to handle that fast-paced sort of approach to setting up these big scores, or having to chase it? Because I think I mentioned it in the previous podcast, like there's a completely different mindset when, let's say today's game, you flip it on its head and you go, okay, let's say Oman got 200 or 220. How do is the Sri Lankan batting lineup and is their sense of of mentality is that set up to chase these big scores, because there's also a method in doing that, you know. So that's why I think a lot of the previous coaches have been calling out that we can play more games on these types of surfaces so that we can get used to these types of scores and especially chasing them down.
I think there's
Estelle,
a point there that a lot of people miss in that, like what Anton says about the mental side of things, right? I think for a team like Sri Lanka, sometimes even setting a total on a good pitch is difficult because it takes a bit of adjustment to gauge how much is a good total when you're consistently been seeing like 140, 150 being a defendable score in Colombo, right? So then when you get to a better track, sometimes you might score 190 and think, oh, we've got a good score on the board, but par on that pitch could be 200 plus, right? So
Correct.
I think that mental shift is something that we don't really talk about or consider much. But as batters, sometimes that also takes a big adjustment to think that, look, 180 is, yes, this is a good pitch. 180 is not a score that we can defend here. We need 200, 220 plus. So that is a factor, I think, across the board, whether it's fans or, you know, the players themselves. It takes some adjustment.
Yeah.
Kavi, I want to come to you to talk about the one change we had in the team today. We did an emergency show where me and Estelle were slightly worried about the inclusion of Dasun Shanaka and about what he brings to the side compared to the person he's replacing in terms of Wanindu Hasaranga. We got a lot of criticism in the comments about it. Which is fine. You know, everyone's allowed their opinion. That's almost the whole point of this show, right? It's to give us a platform to talk about. I have my own reasons why I think we got that amount of criticism, which may be with regard to the profile of where the people who watch this show live in Colombo and what school they may have gone to, which is why I come to you to tell us what you thought about Dasun Shanaka's performance today, and if he's the right person to replace Wanindu.
Look, obviously, there's no way that we can all influence the decision making of the selectors, right? Unless they actually listen to this podcast and listen to our to what we have to say. But I think you should look at the prerequisite of all this, like whether you're in school, whether you're in a top position in a national team, or even like a club of any sport. When you're replacing someone, you need to think like, what are the expectations required from this person? Because you also need to think, Wanindu Hasaranga, one of, like, if not the best spinner we have, okay, and then we have him like shining for Sri Lanka all these years, despite, you know, the blips in form. Is he going to replace someone like that? Probably not. So I think it's definitely worth, I wouldn't say worth the criticism, but it's valid, right? It's valid. When people also like look at the background and like how he's grown up, yes, definitely criticism is valid. I don't know whether he's the correct person, but hey, we'll have to see in the next match. But I saw him bowl. He looked okay, but then he got whacked for a 6, right? I think that was the second and third ball, whacked for 2 sixes. So not good on that end, but we'll have to see against Australia.
Estelle, what was your read on how Shanaka did today?
Yeah, I think from the player's point of view, you also have to think about something we discussed in that emergency pod, right? The fact that, you know, players who are kind of the shadow players or backup players to players like Wanindu, they don't get a lot of opportunities. They don't get a long run in the team to kind of really develop that rhythm and the skill, right? That's, I think, something that we all have to consider. Dasun Shanaka's case, I don't know when he was last involved, where he got a couple of games, back to back, where he was able to bowl. Having said that, I think in this game, he looked rusty. And it looks bad when you've got such a great performance and everyone has ticked the boxes. And it's just that one guy who's kind of, you know, not had by any means a good day, right? Apart from that wicket. It would be a day that he would want to forget, right? So now, regardless of whether he is the right choice or not, I think the the big question comes up now is that do they play him against Australia? And if they don't, then they're most likely going to be forced to go back to a 7-4, aren't they? Because playing Pramod Madushan would mean, or that's the only other extra bowler in the squad. You play Pramod Madushan means you've got a very long tail. Or do you go Lienege or Charit Asalanka and strengthen the batting? So that, I think that is probably the biggest kind of thing to focus on given his performance today, because it again kind of, throws things up in the air in terms of combinations for Sri Lanka, which they seem to be confident in going through with, because today also they went with 6-5, right?
Yeah. Anton, do you think there'll be any changes, or do you think they'll stick with this winning 11?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think I'll start with the positive. I quite like the fact that they haven't changed the squad too much, so they've tried to do a like for like. Of course, you're never going to replace a guy like Waninda Saranga, but in terms of what the player gives you, I think it was like for like. So all the other batters and bowlers sort of stay within their roles, which is what you want. You want role clarity as a player, especially in tournaments like this. So that was a good sign for me, a good positive. And Mark, I think between me and you, we privately said, like, I'm sure this is what they're thinking as well, because Dasun's right on the money with it most of the time, is that Dushan's not necessarily going to be a go-to 4-over guy, right? So they want a wrist spinner. Clearly, they want a wrist spinner within the lineup so that when the matchup comes, that they can bring a guy like that, a wrist spinner on. So I think you're going to probably see a 1 to maybe 2 overs usage of a guy like Dushan. And then obviously, if it's his day and he's doing really well, he can easily push into 4 overs, of course. But I don't think we should expect, we shouldn't fall into the trap of comparing him directly to a Wani, because it's two completely different bowlers. Wani was our strike bowler, whereas I see Dushan's purely going to be used as a matchup. If the matchup is there to bring a leg spinner on to a certain batter, maybe when it's a wicket that's just fallen or whatever the case may be, I think you'll see the usage of that. And then other guys' bowling overs will go slightly further up to make up the 4 overs, like where Dunith was potentially going to be a guy that only bowls 2 to 3 overs. I think you're going to see a lot more overs out of him, which is great because I think he's a good bowler. So I think there are positives. It's more a case of how you're going to use a guy like Dushan. And hey, like, the one question mark I had over him was, compared to a guy like Jeffrey, was, I think he's only played 4 games now for T20Is for Sri Lanka. So give the guy a bit of time. It's his first World Cup game. So, I think to bring it back around, there was a lot of positives that I saw in that selection. You're keeping your squad the same. You're keeping your roles the same. It's now just about being clever about, when you bring Dushan onto bowl.
Yeah, I also...
Just to jump in here on some of the comments, right? I'm not saying, just addressing some of the comments. I'm not saying that they should go back to 7-4, but it is a question that the selectors will have to answer, right? Because now they've seen Dushan. Yes, it's his first game, but I'm thinking from a point of view of what we've seen, right? Where we've had a lot of chopping and changing over the last couple of weeks in particular. Do they now think, look, he's going to go for runs against Australia? Why don't we bolster the batting? Because coming to 6-5 was itself, I think, a big shift, right? We were not expecting it in the first game of the World Cup, but they went with that, and we saw that as a positive kind of decision, right? So just asking the question, do they now reconsider that, or do they back him and give him another game against Australia and see how it goes? Because as Anton said, he could have a good day, right? This is a frontline bowler. I don't think you wouldn't consider him an all-rounder, right? You would consider him more of a bowler. So he could have a good day where he picks up 3 wickets and goes for 25 runs. And that's job done for Sri Lanka. So it's all about whether this kind of puts another question mark in the selectors' heads or not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, I mean, that is a very valid question that the selectors and coaches will have. I think it's a good selection call to have. Do you want to bolster the batting against Australia, where most likely it's going to be a high scoring game? But I'm glad that they gave him his first game today, and not chuck him in against Australia as their first game. So I don't mind them doing a swap for the Australia game if that's the way they want to go. I think this team that played today is absolutely the team that should play on decks like at the Premadasa.
Yeah, to expand about that conversation me and you had on WhatsApp, Anton, I was, one of the things we talked about was that in this side you've got Kamindu, you've got Pavan, and you've got Camille, who can turn their arm a little bit. We obviously saw Kamindu bowl today. He's bowled a bit, kind of sporadically for Sri Lanka during his T20 career. He's bowled in the IPL as well, right? So it's not just us kind of suggesting he can turn it.
Mm-hmm.
The two things that I think are indications of what they're thinking is the fact that Dushan got to bowl out all 4 overs when there was other options. Chamira only bowled 2 overs today. Patharan only bowled 3 overs today. They're probably trying to rest those players, but there's 2 other people who could turn the ball who we didn't see at all. But I also wonder how much we read into the fact that those 2 other bowlers didn't bowl. Are they, are Pavan and Campbell just not considered options at this point? Do we think are they kind of break glass options if everything kind of goes wrong?
I think you've hit the nail on it. Like if that would be my last resort to go to those types of guys, or if we're really playing on a track that offers massive turn, you could then go, okay, if a left-hander is on strike, can we get an off spinner on that can slightly turn the ball? But I think on a good deck, those guys they're not really going to bowl. They were probably resting a few guys today towards the back end. There was no need to bring any one of those guys back on again. So just coming back to my original point, I think it's just up to the captain now that when to use Dushan at those specific times. I think even if they didn't play him in the next game against Australia, you'll probably see Dasun bowl a few more overs. So I think they're well within their right now to sit down and say, hey, do we make one change to the team against Australia specifically, and then come back to our tried and tested method, which has clearly worked in these previous 2 games. So that's what 2 wins does to you guys. They've kept the consistency in their team selection and in their role clarity for the 2 games. They've got 2 wins under the belt. If they want to make a change now for Australia, now's the time to do it, and then they can easily move back to their tried and tested formation again. So that's what wins can do for you. It gives you that space to try things now if they want to.
I just want to bring this comment up because I was thinking about it during the game. The Mega Mangala has written, when it comes to World Cups, we play good cricket. We're going to sweep all 4 matches. I don't think that's true of recent World Cups. I mean, I think back to New York. You think about that opening game. That didn't go well. Then we lost to Namibia in the opening game in Australia. Yeah. And then that World Cup in the UAE kind of, we started well.
Mark, I think you're giving Anton bad flashbacks.
Sorry.
I'm not feeling good vibes in my body right now thinking of that comment. I mean, from an Asia Cup perspective, yes, but I think World Cups, the last couple I think I mentioned it even in the previous show. Unfortunately, we never capitalized on those Asia Cups, and my 2 World Cups that I was part of the team, we definitely underperformed, not just from a result perspective, but just the way that we played. Like it wasn't. We didn't show our true selves, So I think we should take these 2 wins in this World Cup and not really feel good and rest on our laurels. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what it does give you, it gives you 4 points, and it gives you good breathing space to now say, okay, if we want to make a change to a lineup, now's the time to do it against Australia, because we might have to do it if we play in India. So now's the time. If they want to do it, they can do it, and then revert back to type in the game at Premadasa.
Yeah, I wonder if the change may be, and I'm just I'm not near the pitch, so I don't know. They might have looked at that pitch today and thought maybe Leonage as with his seam might be a better kind of all-rounder option there. I don't know what you think about that, Estelle.
Yeah, look, if I can quickly jump in there. Sorry, Estelle, just a quick one point. Like, I think that if you're going to make a change, it'll have to be a guy that's going to maximize with the bat. I think with the ball, all those guys that you're going to bring in, they're going to give you roughly the same thing, right? So it's not like Janeth is going to give you something completely different with the ball than what Dasun gives you. If you're going to make a change, it's got to be a batter who can potentially bat in the top to give you a bit more impetus there, or give you a bit more impetus at the back end. So if you're going to make a change, it'll have to be a batter that's going to maximize as much as he can with the bat. With the ball, I think you've got pretty much everything covered. You're not going to gain anything extra, in my opinion. So yeah, sorry, Estelle, you can carry on.
Yeah. I mean, nothing much to add to that. Exactly what Anton said, right? Like, if you look at the players who are on the bench, who do you have in there that's going to add that much more in the bowling department, who you can use as an all-round? I don't know if there's anybody, right? Unless like it's like a dead R. Premadasa pitch and you're bringing in Charita Sri Lanka, where he got those, wickets against India. I don't see much of an improvement in bringing a Janeth Liyanage in terms of the bowling. So you might as well then look at a better batting option than that, because as we've discussed so many times before, right, the likelihood of your number 7 and 8 having a massive impact with the bat is kind of low in these games, particularly because Sri Lanka is so dependent on that top order, right? So if they are getting multiple overs to bat in, it's going to be because there's been a big collapse, and then it becomes more of a case of surviving and making the best out of things. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't look at Liyanage as the option to replace Dushan, but I mean, you never know, right? Like, who mentioned it? Was it Dom who mentioned that in the nets there were videos of him bowling some off spin?
Yeah.
So you never know, but I don't see that happening. I don't see Liyanage coming in.
I think there's one more thing that we need to talk about before we kind of wrap up, at least the Sri Lankan chat. Kavi, you were questioning whether we should be worried about Patham's form.
I was about to look. No, just say before I make any enemies here, I'm not saying that Patham should be dropped or anything. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, should we be worried in the sense that, like, do we expect more of him? Maybe, considering like the type, the quality of batter he is, because his last. So I just checked this. His last proper like knock game, I think he scored 50 against England in the ODIs, and ever since then in the T20s has not been up to par. Of course, someone is going to have a word with him and just say, hey, we kind of need more runs like at the start, the first 5 overs, the first 10 overs. Like, we need you to shine. But I'm not saying that he needs to be dropped or anything like that. But definitely just a little bit of a concern there. That's all.
You see, I think he's showing the right intent, right? Even with Camel, like there'll be people who are like drop Mishra, bring in KJP, but there's two things. I mean, all of us to some degree or another are confidence people, and all of us need to know that we've got the backing to go out and be our best selves, not just when you're playing international T20 cricket, but like in every aspect of life. And I just think you put Mishra in during the Pakistan series. Was it during the Pakistan series or before that? Anyway, or I think maybe the last Asia Cup, or twice for about 6 months, right? And now we've won 2 games in the bounce. All right, he's not the 2 top order players haven't set the world alight, but I feel, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Anton, that they're playing with the right intent, and that actually it's not really a worry. Because our worry coming into the tournament was that if the top order don't score, we don't win games. But actually, the top order, the top 2 at least, haven't scored big runs the last 2 matches, but we've found a way to still get decent scores.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried at all. I think Patham will show his class. The cream always rises to the top. You must remember that T20 is fraught with risk and danger, especially in the first 6 overs. I know that the first 6 overs, we've spoken about this before, are absolutely crucial in Sri Lankan conditions. And with that, comes an opportunity for the opposition to get 1 or 2 wickets within the first 6 overs. That's what happens. The last thing I want to see is Sri Lanka get through the first 6 overs and they are 30 without loss, because that doesn't help anyone, right? So when you're trying to get 50 plus scores in the first 6 overs, you have to be happy with, as a team and as a fan base, you should be acceptable. It should be acceptable for us to know that we're going to come out of that potentially with 2 wickets down. What's been an awesome positive is that Kusal Mendes has now scored 2 good scores in a row. So we're starting to see that little bit of consistency. And of course, Kamindu played a great knock against Ireland to get us over the line there. So our middle order, top to middle order, has helped us from those scenarios where potentially we have lost early wickets. So that's a great sign. I'm not worried at all. Like you say, the intent has been there. As long as the intent is there, I'm happy. You're gonna get days where you're gonna have 2 or 3 wickets down in the first 6 overs. That's okay, as long as the intent is there, and as long as we try and maximize those first 6 overs, because that is where the scoring should be the easiest, but it's also where the most risk lies. So I'm quite confident that Kamal and Pathum will come good.
Guys,
sorry, I just want to say one more thing, just to address a claim that has been made directly to me using my name. Kusal Mendes, right? So, as viewers of this channel know, I'm definitely not the biggest fan of his, but there is no doubt that he's been showing absolute class in recent matches. I think this is, like, I was having a conversation with one of my close friends. He has to have mature innings. Like, I think it was against Ireland, where he just let Kamindu bat on his own, like play his shots while he was just steadying the ship, right? That is exactly what you need from a veteran of his caliber on the pitch. So yes, Sanuda, yeah. Those are my thoughts on Kusal Mendes. Hope he keeps going like this, because that's exactly what Sri Lanka need, and especially in the batting department.
Can I add something on Kusal Mendes before you finish, Mark?
Course,
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think a lot of criticism comes because people feel that he has not performed to potential, right? Because anybody who looks at him, anybody who watches Kusal Mendes, anyone who's seen him play, like, since the time he debuted, you can see that this guy has a truckload of talent, right? He's a talented guy. He has, like, something different from every other player you see. So I think a majority of that ill feeling or criticism comes from a place that this guy isn't doing enough with what he's got. Despite not playing to his potential, he's still one of the best batters in the team. So I think that is something that we have to keep in mind as well. If you look at that 11, you look at who the batters are available to Sri Lanka outside this squad, how many players are better than Kusal Mendes at what he does, right? So, I mean, you can criticize him in that he hasn't done as much as you would expect with the talent he has, but he's still been one of Sri Lanka's better batters.
Guys, we're not going to have time to open the studio up and let people in for a multitude of reasons, but mainly because it's the middle of the work day for most of us. I will just finish off by what you might not know is Estelle is a secret Australia fan. So no doubt she's been watching them closely. So I just want to know, Estelle, what do you think we could expect from this Australia side in the next game?
Surprise! I have not seen I haven't watched their games, right? And the warm-up game they was scheduled to play against the Netherlands was washed out as well. I was supposed to be on commentary for that, but it didn't work out. So I haven't seen much of them. I would expect it to be like that's one of the most powerful batting lineups in the competition, right? So I think that's where Sri Lanka's bowling is really going to be tested. So the likes of Tikshana, Matisha Patirana, Chamira are going to be really tested. That's where they're going to have to stand up, particularly if, like, Sri Lanka having these problems, right? With Dushan Hemant, Dasun Shanaka having to complete that 4-over spell. So that'll be kind of the big thing to watch out for. But yeah, it should be a good game. On a track like this, I think, Sri Lanka can chase the total down on this track if a couple of that top order get going. I'm not a secret Australia fan. Everybody knows it, right?
Well,
Sri Lanka
if I was an
first,
Australian fan, I'd keep it a
but-
secret. Anton, do you think would you be worried about Australia from a kind of fan perspective?
Well, yeah, I think my first thought that comes to mind for this next game is their bowling attack looks completely different to what it is in the past, right? So it is quite imposing when your first three fast bowlers that you face are Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins. Now Stark's retired, and Hazelwood and Cummins are injured. So from that perspective, I don't care who you replace them with. It's not those three bowlers, right? And all three of those bowlers are in the top 10, maybe even top 6 bowlers in the world. So you can't replace that. So from that perspective, that already gives me confidence from a Sri Lankan team perspective. However, that doesn't mean that the people coming in are not as good or can't do as well. It just gives you a different sense of a feeling, and I think that's a huge thing to have for an opposition player, right? So if I was Pathum and Kamal, I would definitely feel slightly more confident in facing Nathan Ellis and those types of guys than compared to a Hazelwood and a Cummins, right? So from that perspective, already the confidence should be up, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat them lightly. Of course, it's Australia. When they put on that yellow jersey, they turn into beasts, right? I can't think of two completely polar opposite teams when it comes to their approach to play. The Australian batting lineup is just filled with power, muscle, brute strength. They're going to be looking to clear the fence and put the bowlers under the pump from ball one, whereas Sri Lanka is slightly more stroke play. How they're going to use the pace is and rather than try and hit the ball out of the ground, it's can they get inside and maybe flick one over fine leg. We could probably see a couple more ramp shots over the keeper type of vibe. So there are ways that you can get on top of that attack, So, and then towards the end, I think the last 3 to 5 overs, in my opinion, stays the same, where you've got guys like Dasun and whoever is going to be facing those last overs. Then, of course, you try and squeeze one through third man, or you try and clear the fence every now and then. I think our bowlers, if ever there's going to be a difference within the two teams where it's going to give us a chance to get our foot through the door, is our bowling attack. Our bowling, this is where I think we should lean on our bowlers even more, where they can potentially get the breakthrough for us in the first 6 that puts them on the back foot, and try and contain them as much as we can with good quality death bowling and obviously good fielding as well. The Aussies place a high emphasis on their fielding, and I think Sri Lanka need to do that as well in the next game. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating mashup because you're going to see two completely different strategies and the ways to go about scoring. That doesn't mean we can't do it. We've done it before at Pallekele, but I'm fascinated to see how the guys go about it.
It's going to be the beautiful finesse style of Sri Lanka versus the brute force of Australia.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. It's a mouth-watering fixture just thinking about it. I'm absolutely buzzed that we've got 4 points from our first 2 games. We are well on this road to Ahmedabad. We've been the Murali End. Anton, Kavi, Estelle, thank you for joining us today. We'll be back shortly after the game on Monday. Win, lose or draw, Murali End is there for all your Sri Lanka cricket needs. See you then. Bye.
It's the Murali End, you're the place to be. Analyze the players and the team. Keep a great company in the stream.
It's a Murali End. Welcome to the show. We're here when you're high. We're here when you're low. Some days you're happy, some days you wanna when happy it's we, when mad it's them. It's the same place, Murali End. Sri Lanka cricket we go represent. Go tell a friend.